Welcome to the Daily Boogie.
Since the big story is everything is trying to distract from the Mueller investigation, nobody would ever try to distract from the memo, right? Nobody would ever dream of distracting from the memo, because to distract from the memo would just be distracting from the distraction of the Mueller investigation. So you're really just aiding the original distraction from the Mueller investigation to the memo. We would never want to distract from... Wait, do we want to distract from the memo to get it back onto the Mueller investigation? Or do we want to distract from the Mueller investigation? Well, just don't distract anybody, okay? Whatever you do, don't distract.
We have a moral responsibility to act now to protect dreamers who are the pride of our nation and are American in every way, but on paper. So I use this occasion as opposing this bill.
Don't distract from the Mueller investigation.
Further about social
Nancy?
justice in America. We feel like second-class members of Congress over here when it's not within our realm to discuss something that's being discussed across the country.
Ladies and gentlemen, can someone please explain to me why Nancy Pelosi saw fit to distract the nation from the Mueller investigation for a period of 8 hours? Can anyone explain that to me?
In the Senate of the United States, at the White House, but here we can't have...
The address was the longest continuous speech in House history at least a century. But she's distracting us from the Mueller investigation. This shouldn't be happening. I'm sorry, Nancy. You know better than this, darling. You've got a heart. You've got compassion. You know that a Russian spy is in the White House as we speak, comrade. You shouldn't distract from the Mueller investigation. The Mueller investigation is like Tinkerbell in Peter Pan. If you don't believe in it, it won't exist. You got to think happy thoughts. Don't ever say you don't believe in Russian investigations or a fairy dies. Something like that. Something like that. Tamara says, it was the rambling of a dementia patient. No, that's not fair. She's not a patient yet. I think you have to be, under observation or committed or something for that to be fair. Dragnet said, she said they are American in every way except on paper. The legal way. Yeah, there is a bit of that. But, really what she's doing here is distracting everybody from the Mueller investigation. And that shouldn't happen. That should not happen. If we don't all pay attention to the Mueller investigation, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, then it will cease to exist. So, Nancy, you should know better.
The opportunity to officially discuss legislation that is on the floor.
What?
And that...
Nancy, you can't. Nobody's got a chance to discuss because you held the whole floor captive for 8 hours. People were getting cramps in their shoulders because they had their arm up. Can I have a chance to speak, please? Can I speak, please? Nancy's like, sit down, shut up. Listen to my rant. Now, see, this is a poor rant. So we started off the show with a doyen of the ranting art form, Alex Jones, and he showed you precisely what it takes, the kind of effort, the kind of gumption, the kind of blood, sweat, and tears that you have to put into a rant to make it quality. Like, they don't roll off the backs of trucks. They don't grow on trees, these rants. These rants have to be carefully cultivated, ladies and gentlemen. But she's showing you right now the do not do's of a rant. Like, it's quality over quantity. 8 minutes of the Alex Jones rant is preferable to 8 hours of the Nancy Pelosi rant. I'm just saying.
That is why I'm taking this time.
She's tried too hard.
1 minute.
1 minute.
To read into the record And
I just want 1 minute. She's up there for 8 hours. It's like, when your wife says, I'm just going to look in this shop for a minute. It's like, well, I better park my ass on this bench out the front here and order a pizza because we're going to be a while.
Inspiring stories. In 2012, Luke was 11 years old. His family brought him to the United States from South Korea. His parents brought him to the United States from Thailand when he was 9 years old. Licia Dalla, Indian American. Her personal story. Alejandro Gonzalez. Story goes like this, Mr. Speaker. Luis Gonzalez. When Luis was 8 years old, his family came to the United States from Mexico. We have a little boy here.
I want to know if anyone knows anybody. Tamara says it's all just word salad. Nothing she says makes sense. I want to know if anybody out there watched the entire thing, the whole 8 hours from beginning to end. If anybody out there in the world did that, get on the line, get on the blower. We will have you on Skype. You give us your top 10s from the speech. Give us what you thought of it. Give us your breakdown. We'll have a 5-hour interview breaking down the 8-hour speech. How's that? What did she do when she had to pee? Maybe she doesn't have to pee. Maybe she doesn't have to go pee. She may have some kind of hygiene product, which is fine. Like, hey, that's science, baby. I'm all for science. You realize we're only a minute 20 into a 3-minute boil down of an 8-hour speech, right?
Asiel was a 5-year-old boy. His family brought him to the United States from Mexico. Her name is Naomi Florentino. Her parents brought her to the United States from Mexico when she was 10 years old.
Mexico.
This is another one, a
Another one?
Sacramento State
Come on,
graduate
how many do you
that
need?
Congresswoman Matsui submitted to us.
Look, on a serious note, you remember the last Periscope we did, and we discussed, if you go to thecommondiscourse.com, let me throw it up for you. I'll show you something. Let me show you all a little something. If you go to thecommondiscourse.com and go down to videos, and it was either yesterday's video or the day before, how Donald Trump is stealing Democrat votes. Okay, so if you click on that and have a look, we go through the State of the Union address, and the argument being that speech was designed for Democrat voters. He was talking specifically to Democrat voters. He wasn't talking to Republicans. And the way he framed things, and each of the little ticks that he gives when you analyze the speech, he associates a story to it. So he'll say about business tax, and then he goes up to the stands and he goes, such and such is working for a business. He lost his job. Now he's a welder, right? And, another story, when he was mentioning communism, just so happens, and then he's got the guy from North Korea, that's not an accident. So he's putting a story associated to each little bullet point of the speech when you take it in its totality. So, and the argument was it's often said that liberals love stories, because people on the right will say, liberals don't care about facts. They care about feelings. And I'm not saying it's necessarily true or not. I think it's probably more true. It's intrinsically true, but it's not always true. Like, exceptions to trends do not invalidate trends, right? But if you just observe liberal media, it's stories. It's not hard statistics. It's stories, which is fine. But that's the way they interact with the political world on that level. And again, that's cool. But Trump knows it. And he was doing that. He was telling stories, which is why I'm conservative leaders in the past would get up there and just hit their conservative talking points, bang, bang, bang. And the Democrats would know exactly how to counter it because they would just read stories. So here we are. Nancy Pelosi now is doing but she's doing it overkill. She's up there for 8 hours and she's like, oh, what about Alejandro? What about Jose? What about little Yi Ming? What about all of these stories? It's like, yes, Nancy, but you've lost the momentum because nobody's listening to your stories anymore. There's other stories out there. But she's doing exactly what we discussed, telling stories.
This is Pablo da Silva.
See?
Pablo was brought to the United States from Brazil in 2001 when he was 13 years old. Esther Chong, a student at Rutgers University, Newark. When Esther was 6 years old, she and her family immigrated to the States from South Korea. Diego Garcia Ramirez, 31-year-old man from
Lily
El
Lane
Monte,
says it's the
provided
first
for
time
his
she's
wife
worked a
and
full
3
8
kids,
hours.
just had his DACA approved at the end of July. And
What about
considers the
Tamara, says
opportunity
Tamara.
of DACA
Exactly.
a blessing from God. Andrea Ramos Fernandez. Andrea is a local San Antonio dreamer. Evelyn Valdez Ward from Irvine, California. Graduate student, University of California, Irvine.
See, this is the thing. It's quality, not quantity. Yes, there are, you know what? In a nation of, 320 plus million people, guess what? There's a lot of stories. There's a lot of stories. Shit, Nancy, everybody's got a story. Everybody's got a story. But if people aren't listening to you, who gives a fuck about the story? Right? If you've lost your stranglehold on the imagination of the public, then your stories are just being, pushed out into space faster than Elon Musk's rocket. Your stories are heading out somewhere. They're now past Saturn. They're gone. They're finished. They're... Bye-bye story. Look, children, look. Mummy, is that a shooting star? No, it's one of Nancy's stories. There it goes. Make a wish, children. I wish I don't have to listen to any more of these fucking stories. Hey, don't swear. Thank you for the super heart, Lily. So essentially, because I'll let you in on a little secret. Politicians rather people talk about them in disparaging ways than not talk about them at all. That's like a little unwritten rule in politics. Like, how everybody's talking about Donald Trump constantly for the last 12 months? But even though if 90% of it's bad, he doesn't care. Why? Because they're talking about him. So he still can get their attention like that. He can drop one tweet, and they will be talking about what he wants them to talk about, whether they like it or not, whether they realize it or not. When Nancy Pelosi tweets, nothing happens. Nothing. Because people don't care. They're not listening anymore. And politicians would rather you be listening and don't like what they say than not listening at all. Because if you're talking and they're listening, and even if they don't like what you say, they're at least engaged, so you've still got a chance. You can still win them over. If they're not listening to you anymore, then you have no chance. You have no avenue. You can't win them over because they're not listening. Like in a sport analogy, it's like when they say the coach has lost the dressing room. Like the coach would rather be feared and hated but listened to than not listened to. Same applies in politics.
Colleagues, for the last 8 hours, I have had the privilege of reading the
8 hour white woman politician privilege there on display.
Testimony of so many dreamers. I still have more, but our basic request is honor the House of Representatives. Give us
At least she admitted her white privilege. That's the main thing. Because, Nancy, think of all the people that don't have a voice. Think of all the people who didn't have a voice for the last 8 hours. Like everybody else in the chamber. There's a lot of people of colour in the chamber. They're not all white in the chamber. Think of all the people that don't have a voice today. Why? Because you won't shut up? Yeah. That's white privilege, baby.
chance to have it vote on the floor. Let us thank and acknowledge the dream.
The General wants to talk about the tranny behind her for a second. Thoughts on the tranny, General? It's up to you. Tamara says, what if Kate Steinley's killer had been black? What do you think the sentence would have been? Oh, obviously, 20 life sentences. 20 life sentences, surely. Throw them in because it's racism. It's just, I just refer back to racism when I'm not sure. There's some kind of idiosyncratic anomaly within the American legal system. I just throw back to racism and, you know what? Everybody says, you know, how enlightened I am.